The 80s and 90s gave us some of the greatest comics of all time, and some other things as well. However, during that time, there was one imprint that reigned supreme: Vertigo. Vertigo was the shot against the bow that the industry needed as a whole. Sadly, the once renowned imprint is no more, since, for whatever reason, DC Comics decided to close it and start doing what is known as Black Label Comics. However, the legacy of Vertigo is still alive and well in the many groundbreaking titles that were released. Today, we're going to be talking about those books. Today, we're talking all about Vertigo Comics. When I was first starting to get seriously into comics, there was one name that kept coming up among the various websites, and that name was Brian K. Vaughan. Vaughan was already a recognizable name at the time, but the one book that really blew him up into the comic superstardom that he has been in is Y: The Last Man. The concept of this story is simple. What would happen in the world if everything that had a Y chromosome suddenly died horrifically? At its core, Y: The Last Man is a simple premise, and you may be thinking it would be awesome to be the last man on Earth. You might want to think twice about that. You have to realize that you would become the world's greatest commodity. You would be ripped apart, you would be hunted, and you would be picked and prodded to try to figure out just why you were the one that survived this huge plague. I love Y: The Last Man. It's so brilliant in its simplicity and so dense in its execution. I will say that at first Yorick may not be the most likable character, and you may downright hate him though. However, he does grow on you, and as you go on, you are introduced to more likable characters with more interesting backstories and a lot more depth to them, such as Agent 355. For my next choice, I'm not going to be beating around the bush with this one. I'm going with Preacher. Now, if you've known me for a few years, you know automatically that Preacher is my favorite comic of all time. The story of Reverend Jesse Custer as he goes around the world looking for God after being possessed by a being called Genesis is amazing. Writing duties are handled here by Ennis, and his script here is sharp and satirical as he takes on all manner of different religions, themes, and various beliefs in a sometimes super offensive manner. On top of that, there's also an Irish whiskey drinking vampire named Cassidy who is awesome. I will warn you though that if you are one that gets easily offended, Preacher is not for you. Ennis doesn't care about your feelings, he doesn't care if you're offended, he is telling the story that he wants to tell, and man does it get offensive. What's also great here is Ennis' signature style of being able to create villains that you absolutely love to hate. Take for example Jesse Custer's grandmother, a harpy of a woman that within the first few pages of figuring out what she is about, you will loathe this bitch. The art duties here are handled by Steve Dillon, and what I found the most interesting about this is that Steve Dillon's art got kind of less detailed as it went on. This is to say that it's not bad, but I will say it's something that I noticed, and towards the end it gets almost borderline cartoony, but it works. It works with the overtop nature of what Preacher is. Look, bottom line is that if you haven't read Preacher, this is a must-read. It's one of Vertigo's signature titles for a reason, and I absolutely adore the damn thing. And as a side note, the Absolute editions are gorgeous. They're a work of art. They are beautifully well put together things. Speaking of controversial books, my next choice is Transmetropolitan. What is considered by many to be the quintessential Warren Ellis story, Transmetropolitan follows the tale of gonzo journalist Spider Jerusalem in the far-off future as he does whatever he has to do in order to crack a news story. What's so fascinating is to see just how many things that Warren Ellis was able to get right about our future. Take for example, one of the main antagonists, the Smiler. The Smiler could easily be a representation of one of the different presidents that we've had over the last few years, both Democrat and Republican. Art duties here are handled by Derek Robertson, and I have to give the man credit. Every single page is just teeming with life. This being a city, everything in the background has to feel like it's popping. Everything has to feel like it's moving. Things are happening. And he gets to experiment with a lot of different things because this is kind of a future where things get weird. Ultimately, it's a world that is absolutely fascinating, but I would never want to live there. The final choice on my list is arguably one of, if not the greatest comic of all time, Sandman. Sandman is intelligent, beautiful, and one of my favorite comics ever. Written by Neil Gaiman, Sandman tells the story of the character of Dream. Dream is the living embodiment of the concept of dreams. He is also part of one of the 7 beings called the Endless. At the start of the story, Dream is coming back from completing a mission and he is somehow captured by a group of flunky magicians. They, in fact, were actually trying to capture his sister, Death. Dream is then withheld against his will for about 70 years. When Dream escapes, he sets out to rebuild his kingdom, having come back to it and found it to be in complete disarray. However, the thing about Sandman is that the main character is hardly in the story at all. Instead, what we get is a sequence of tales dealing with people handling various situations, and Dream shows up at the end to assist and offer some advice. The mythos of Sandman is so well read and so grand in scale that every time I try to write something that is even comparable to a single issue of Sandman, I melt. I can't do it. For whatever reason, it's just so intimidating. I can honestly read this series time and time again, and I discover new things. I discover new aspects of the mythology that Neil Gaiman is talking about, new characters that I really didn't even notice that play a larger part later on. It's insane. It really is, and it deserves all the praise that the series has gotten in the last 30 years. There you have it, folks. Those are my choices for my top must-read Vertigo titles. Please let me know what you think about my choices. You can have your own discussion down below in the comment section and let me know what you think are the best Vertigo titles. If you want, you can buy these books down below in the description. I have Amazon links. If you use those links, I get a cut of the profit. Doesn't come out of your wallet, comes out of Amazon's. Guys, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. That is the best way to get a hold of me. And of course, I love you, and I'll speak with you soon. Bye.